Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Of course. So before we get to what's actually in the bill, I should note that you've been advocating for this for more than 7 years now, and now the bill has been signed into law. How do you feel right now?
Overjoyed. I'm excited for the difference that it's going to make in so many people's lives, people who I don't even know, but they're going to have a new opportunity, and I'm grateful that we can make that happen for them.
So I think the big question in everyone's minds right now after the bill has been signed into law is how long is it going to take before the first retail sales start in New York? Obviously, there's a lot to happen before then, but based on your expectations, based on the bill, when do you think we could start seeing the first retail sales?
Well, based on my experience and looking at what other states and, by the way, Canada have done, it generally would take about 18 months to 2 years. But honestly, we're New Yorkers. I don't think it's going to take us that long. I'm going to suspect that it's going to take a minimum, though, at least a year, maybe 18 months. So I think we are going to get started aggressively trying to look at how the board structures will look. That is going to be key to begin putting things in place. And I anticipate that can happen relatively quickly. In fact, I'll be having some conversations with the speaker and others soon about that topic.
So now that the bill has been signed into law, you can immediately make those appointments to the Cannabis Control Board to get the process started. Is that right?
Yes. We'd like to get that started as soon as possible.
So when retail sales do start, you've come up with a tax rate on retail sales of 13%. That's less than we see in Massachusetts, but it might actually be a little bit higher than what we see in New Jersey. Can you talk to me about how you arrived at the 13% and if you're worried at all about people downstate maybe going to New Jersey to buy the drug rather than buying from shops in New York?
I actually am not. I think it's competitive. And, New York has a lot that Jersey doesn't. People will come to New York to do things that don't even live here. And so I think that our tax rate is competitive. It's not my preferred rate, but I think it is competitive, and I think we'll do fine with it.
So let's talk about what happens with the tax revenue that the state is going to collect from marijuana sales. 40% of what the state collects is going to be reinvested in communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the state's prohibition on marijuana. You were a big supporter of that, a big advocate for making that happen. Are you happy with the 40% of the revenue as the share? And what do you envision for communities that want to apply for those grants? What do you see there?
I'm delighted at that percentage. As you know, the legislation was originally introduced with a 50% requirement. But, this is negotiations, and you have to start somewhere. And I'm not disappointed at all with the results that we have. And I think those dollars should go directly into the lives of those people who were incarcerated, as well as their children and the communities that they live in. The next thing to do is to determine what are the people who have suffered that harm. What do they need? I think what they may need in Utica could be very different than what they need in Buffalo. It could be very different than what they need in the Bronx as compared to Syracuse or Binghamton. And so it depends on the person. It depends on the community. It could be things like taking the lead out of people's houses who live in impoverished conditions because they haven't been able to work because they had to check that felony box on an application. And so there are a number of things that we can do to invest in the lives of people and make them better. And I think we have to go about finding out what they are and getting them done. Honestly, most medicines you can get with an insurance card as well, but you can't use an insurance card to get medical marijuana. So there are some differences, and sometimes it's hard to compare them as if they're apples and apples when they're actually apples and oranges.
You bring up a really good point about insurance. Insurance doesn't cover medical marijuana in New York State, and that's partly because of the federal prohibition. Some states have tried to experiment with having insurance cover it. Do you think that we could try something like that in New York?
Well, I think one of the things that New York does for any issue across the nation is that it leads. And so even though we're not number one in legalizing, I think we can be number one in the advocacy for getting access to insurance coverage. And I think that we also can be number one in demonstrating how you legalize and putting equity as an intentional piece rather than as a second thought. And I think given those things that there is potential for the federal government to move a little quicker towards removing the barriers that prohibit insurance for medical marijuana.
And I feel like we have to talk about the criminal justice aspect of this, which I think was an impetus of the bill, obviously. In New York State and around the country, marijuana arrests have been disproportionately targeted towards people of color and not so much toward people that look like me. And I'd like you to speak to that, because I feel like a lot of people in the state just haven't had to deal with that issue, so they may not be familiar with why this has been important.
Well, I think you're exactly right. Most people don't get it. Any study will tell you that the majority of people who use marijuana in this country look more like you than I. But I happen to be the look of the person who ends up going to jail on a regular basis, and even for small amounts. I mean, there are some people in places in this country that are still in jail for having a nickel bag of marijuana. Yet, 2 states away, people are selling it as a legal product or either selling it as a medical product. And it's just something that's so unfair about that. And so if you don't fix the criminal justice part of it, you really haven't done anything, in my estimation, by legalizing it.
Is there anything that wasn't included in the bill that you wish had just made it in there? Any parts of the original MRTA, or maybe that weren't even in the MRTA, that you wish had been in this bill?
You know, I don't want to digress. I think I'm satisfied with the 3-way bill that we agreed to do on yesterday. And I think if there are opportunities to do any future tucks to it or tweaks or technical issues, we can do that. I think what's more important now is that Governor Cuomo has signed it, and that we needed to move with some speed in putting together the board structure, because implementation is more important than the legislation. And here we're talking about people's lives. We don't have a choice but to be successful. And so now my desire is to see that implementation is properly done.
All right, we'll be looking out for it. Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day and stay safe.